Hey, what's up, everybody? We are live on the Deal Champs podcast. Welcome to episode number 21. Our mission on Deal Champs is to empower and inspire listeners by highlighting real life deals from people across the nation and bringing on super cool guests like Mr. Greg Helbeck today. We'll also be doing interviews with top entrepreneurs, experts in the field, and we aim to provide valuable insights and actionable tips to help our audience achieve their own business and financial goals. Quick around the house introduction. My name is Dean Rogers, one of your hosts here. If you don't know who I am, my background is I had transitioned from the NFL to corporate to then real estate, been investing in real estate for a decade now in Central California. I wanted to give Stratton some crap today because he kept saying, you keep saying it's almost 600 deals. It's actually, I'm going to say, it's over 550 deals. We're getting close.
No, we're getting close. Getting close.
Yep. Got a rental portfolio of almost $10 million and coaching students how to get started and create success in their business. And you can always connect with me at deanrogers.com. So next, Mr. Jason.
Hey guys, I am your other co-host. It's Jason Pritchard. Background on me is I worked in corporate America for about 15, 16 years and went full-time into real estate in 2014. Haven't looked back since. We flipped and wholesaled probably 350, 400 houses at this point right now. We own a rental portfolio with over 100 units here in the Central California area. And our goal with the podcast is try to transfer as many of the things that we've learned in our real estate journeys to you guys along the way. And I'm really excited to have Greg on the show. We were just connecting on this before we went live. I met him initially at a sales training event when I first got into the business, and sales and acquisitions very near and dear to my heart. And I expect Greg to drop some serious jewels on today's show today, man. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mr. Greg Helbeck, give us a quick intro, a little teaser.
Yeah. So I'm Greg Helbeck. I've been doing this full time ever since I got out of college. I actually started the business in college. So since 2015, I've been doing this business. So it's crazy how time flies. It's coming up on 8 years now, which is nuts. And, long story short, I started when I was 20 and it took me a couple of years to build like an actual business. And now we have a really solid operation in the Northeast. And I do a handful of deals out here in California because I spend probably 6-7 months out of the year out in San Diego.
Killer. For those of you guys that are listening to this on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. You can follow all of us on Instagram. Myself is at Dean Rogers Real Estate. Jason's at Jason Pritchard. And Greg, remind me yours again.
It is at Grego, GREGO_37, the legendary hockey number that I had 10, 15 years ago.
Heck yeah, it lives on.
It's a goalie number, but they gave it to Mr. Helbeck for some reason.
Love it. All right. And for those of you guys that want to submit your deals to be highlighted on the Deal Champs podcast, you guys can do that by going to deanrogers.com/podcast. It'll take you guys right to a Google form, fill that out, and we'd love to have you on and highlight you on the podcast. And then if you're listening to this live and you want your name to show up in the comments, you guys can go to streamyard.com/Facebook, click a few buttons, and then we can see who it is. Announcements. Do we have any announcements right now, Jason?
Nothing, man. We've got a lot of stuff in the works, but nothing really that I think that we have to go over right now, man. I'd love to jump right in and get going with Greg.
Let's do it, man. Well, dude, the main event, the special man himself, Mr. Greg Helbeck, Mr. Coast to Coast investor, virtual investor. I'm excited to dive in and find out more. I mean, we've known each other for a handful of years now, and every time I talk to you, dude, it's just like, I'm just excited to see what you're going to do next. So why don't we just dive in to let the audience in on just kind of who you are a little bit more, talk about kind of, what you got going on in your business, what excites you, what you got going on, and then, we'll just kind of dive into the details.
Sure. So I got started. I was pretty young. I was 20 years old. I had a failed hockey career that went south, and I was back going to community college like a loser. And I was living with my parents, and I just felt stuck, and I didn't know what to do next. So my buddy actually sent me a Snapchat of a real estate seminar that was in Newburgh, which is like 25 minutes from where I grew up. and they were talking about like wholesaling houses. And I didn't really know what that was. But I started to like read personal development books. So I kind of knew that people made money in real estate. Like, I think everyone knows that, I guess subconsciously a little bit. So I went to this seminar, and this was in 2015, September of 2015. And I remember like they were talking about like you can use someone else's money and buy a piece of property and make the difference. And I'm like, that seems crazy. Like, that seems crazy, but it also seemed possible because the people talking at the seminar, didn't seem like brain surgeons. So I'm like, I bet you if they can figure that out, I'm sure with enough work that, I can figure this out myself. So I spent like $2,000 on an education program that I split with my friend 50-50 because you could take a guest. So I was out $1,000. That was legit. It sounds like an infomercial, but like it was half the money I had in my bank account, right? Like real talk. And, I was like, I'm going to do this. So we went to the next seminar in Yonkers, which is now down by New York City, about 10 minutes from New York City.
Dude, the East Coast has the best names, dude. Yonkers,
Ronkonkoma,
does it get better than that?
Poughkeepsie. Yeah, dude, it's all like Indian tribe names, right? So we're down there, and they like deep dive. They're like, okay, this is how you fix and flip. This is how you wholesale. This is how you market. And it was like an intense training. It was like 2 or 3 days. I got out of there, and I'm like, the first thing that I did was I was like, I'm going to start marketing, right? I'm going to go on Craigslist and I'm going to hang bandit signs. And that's what I did day in and day out. And it took like 9 months, man. 9 months of just absolute grinding. And this was in
Brutal.
Yeah, it was brutal, man. Like there was no tech really. Like there wasn't like driving.
There really wasn't much,
dude. Software wasn't really like that big. Like there was nothing like there is now. And that was only 8 years ago. And I ran into a deal. And long story short, the seller called a bandit sign. And I didn't know what to do. So there was like another local investor who's a friend of mine. We just wholesaled on my house last week, actually. And he was like, listen, I'll split the deal with you and I'll show you what to do. And I'm like, sounds good to me. So he helped me get this thing under contract. We ended up wholesaling it for like 10 grand. But the key to that was I came back to my parents' house and I'm like, here, I have a check for a real estate deal. Because they saw me working, but they didn't see any results and they didn't like have an entrepreneurial mindset. So they were just kind of like, I hope this works out. So I did that deal, and then I did another deal, and then I started kind of like stumbling my way into deals every couple months. And then what ended up happening was I wasn't making enough money to like really like move out of my house. I didn't have anything that was like really established. And back in the day, like New York for new people is like impossible to work in because you got attorneys, you got huge deposits, like everything in New York is really difficult just because the way people are there. So I was like, I think New York is a problem. And I knew that like I was going on appointments and I'm like, if I wanted to like be able to move to California, which was like the dream, I need to be able to like not have to go to a property. And like, I want to do this where I don't have to physically be there. And I'm sure there's a way to do that. So I had a little hypothesis and I'm like, all right, if I go market in a different area and it's easier, then, there it is. Like that's the answer to my problem. And if it's the same shit, then I'm just a clown, right? That's how I thought about it. So in 2018, so this was like, 2 years later, 2018, I started doing marketing in like Dallas, Texas. And I no longer operate in Dallas, but this was like years ago. And I remember I found a seller and she was super motivated. This was in the hood of Dallas. She had this vacant property she inherited. I cold called it because I was like cold calling all like the vacant tax delinquent people. Like this is before the stackers or anything. I was just kind of like piecing shit together. And I remember I had it in contract. I didn't know how to sell it. So I called a guy in Dallas who I knew from a mastermind and we split that deal. We split 18 grand and I got a wire for 9. And I'm like, I never went to the property. I never saw it. I barely did anything except for get the lead and make the offer. And then the next week, we did like a deal for like, I think it was like 28 grand. So it was like a pretty decent wholesale deal. And I made more money. And I had this system where I'm like, all right, if I spend 4 hours calling, I'm going to get a couple leads. And if I get a couple leads, I'll make a few offers a day. And then that'll get me consistency. So literally like from the winter of 2018 up until like the late spring, I started pumping these deals out in Dallas, right? Like 2 or 3 a month, like nothing crazy, but like, enough like money to like, be like, oh shit, I actually have something here. And I wasn't going to the properties and I wasn't dealing with any attorney bullshit. And I'm like, okay, now I have some money. I can do this same thing in San Diego. Like I can be in San Diego and I can do this in Dallas. Like it's the same thing. It doesn't matter where I am. So I ended up moving to San Diego. I saved some money up and graduated college all like throughout that process. It was a tight timeline. Moved to San Diego And I kept doing what I was doing in Texas. And I was like, oh, wow, like this works. Like I'm making like decent money now. And I was like 23 years old. So I was super young, had all the freedom in the world to do whatever I wanted, like within reason. And then what ended up happening was I started to realize over time, like the rest of the year was great, but I'm like, there was only so many of these really distressed, like niche properties in Dallas and Fort Worth, like that whole Metroplex. And I'm like, I think eventually I'm going to like run this well dry and I'm going to have to go back to doing like traditional marketing. Cause I had money at this point because I saved a bunch of money up. We started doing some wholesale deals and stuff. This is cheap properties back in the day. So then I'm like, all right, now I have more experience. I have money now, like, not a ton of money, but more money than I had when I started. I think if I go back and start doing this in New York, I can actually spend money on marketing. Like I can actually spend like $5,000 a month on mail, et cetera, et cetera. So what ended up happening, like what was that, 2019, 20, et cetera, I started like getting back into like traditional marketing. And like I had money at that point. I started closing on deals and doing fix and flips and slowly but surely built up a business now where I got 4 full-time people, including myself. And, we do, 5-6 deals a month, nothing crazy. But our spreads are pretty big in New York and in Delaware. And I have, pretty much minimal involvement with like the acquisitions and the leads. And I just kind of sit on the disposition seat and manage all the rehabs, and started buying rentals in 2020. So that's like my story in a nutshell. You're muted there, Jay.
Sorry, there's a ton to unpack there, right? So I want to make sure that everybody that's tuning in can pick up on some of those nuggets that you dropped. So let's go back to the beginning. I know you said you're in your early 20s. I know you probably get approached by a lot of young adults now. I know I do too, right? And they have this interest in getting into real estate, but I think most people underestimate how much of a sales job this is, especially on the front end, right? They don't realize. I heard you say, hey, I was on the phone for 4 hours. You kind of like casually just dropped that in through your story, right? Did you come from a sales background initially? And did you know, or were you just like, what gave you the insight that made you focus on that at the beginning when you were that young and inexperienced?
So what ended up happening was throughout this process, I was reading a lot of books and like listening to, Gary Keller and all these people who like are experts, right? And I remember reading in the one thing probably in 2017 or 2018, he's like, you got to figure out your one thing and do it for 4 hours a day. This is probably the second time I read that book. And I'm like, I think my one thing is getting leads. And if I can get leads for 4 hours a day, like actually spend 4 hours, like doing the actual shit, I bet you that will get me better results than what I'm currently getting. So like in 2018, like listen, this was a while ago. It's like crazy how fast time goes in real estate with tech and stuff. But I'm like, if I can spend 4 hours a day, like identifying and prospecting to these like really targeted lists, like this wasn't like mass cold calling. These were like people who owed $15,000 in taxes who had a vacant property. Like I'm calling like serious people, like not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry in Dallas. So I started spending like time doing those activities. And then that system was working really well. So then like that feedback, I was like, oh shit, I'm going to keep doing this. Cause if I keep putting this input in, I'm going to get the output that I'm getting. And that like down the funnel ended up resulting in money. So I was like, okay, if I spend the 4 hours a day, it's gonna like over the week get me like 2 or 3 leads a day. And then I'll make offers on at least half of those. And then like these were targeted leads. So like a lot of those offers were getting accepted. While I'm doing that, I'm also learning how to sell. Like I'm learning from John, I'm learning from Chris Voss, I'm learning from Sandler. Like I'm kind of like understanding that whole dance that goes on and like, the negative sales bullshit and the, all that tactical voodoo that does work. Yeah. But like I'm learning as I'm doing. So that is what kind of helped me. But I didn't have like a real sales background. Like my parents weren't in sales. Like my mom's a teaching assistant and my dad was a cop. So like there's no like selling environment. But I knew that quick story. I went on an appointment like before I moved to California. And I remember the guy kicked me out of the house because it was such a train wreck. He was just like, get out of here. And the New York guy, he's like, get out of my house. Like, you're a I remember I sat down at his like little living room table and he was like standing above me with his arms crossed. And I'm like, I got to get out of this. And he's like, get out of here. Like it was a total disaster. And I remember I was in my car. I was so embarrassed. I'm like, I think I got to learn how to sell because I definitely don't know what I'm doing right now. Like I was probably dealing with an unqualified prospect. Right?
How early was that?
Yeah.
Like super early?
Probably 2017, I'd say.
You know what's crazy, dude, is that like 90% of people quit after that moment. Yeah. I guarantee you 90% of people that are brand new go back to their car and they're like, I'm just not cut out for this shit anymore. It's only for guys like Dean or whoever, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it was really cool that I think that you not only didn't quit, but you doubled down and said, damn, that sucked. I need to get better at this. And I think I struggle with that with people that I coach and mentor. Dean, I know you and I have conversations about this too. It's like people see all the sexy stuff on TV and social media with like real estate, and they want to go pick out the material and they want to make all the money and they want to do the flips, and they don't realize there's some dirty work that you got to get involved in at the front end, man. And a lot of that is based around your sales and your acquisition process. So that's really cool.
I'm very happy that happened, because if it wasn't for that, like, let's just say in theory, the first 3 months in real estate, I made 30 grand, like as a 20-year-old moron, right? He could barely, blow his nose. That would have been worse, because I would have been like, oh my God, I'm rich. I got, whatever, 25 grand in the bank. And then I would think everything else would be easy. But I'm actually grateful, looking back on it now, that it took me a long time to like develop, because I had to like really like learn and earn and learn and earn. And it was like a steady thing, because I see a lot of people too, like they'll start and like they'll get lucky with some cold call or whatever. Yeah. They'll make 30 grand. They have no skills, no experience. They straight up got lucky. That's just the way it is. And then after, they go into like this valley of death, and they're just like, oh my God, I can't believe no one else is going to give me their house half off. It's like, bro, like we spend 25, 30 grand a month on marketing to get like a handful of people to do that. Like, so I think if you're starting, like, if it sucks in the beginning, you got to understand that's good, because that's what separates everybody. Like, and it sounds cheesy, but like, if it was easy to go find a seller to give you $100,000 of equity, right, via a direct mail postcard, everyone would just be like, oh, I'm going to send 200 mailers and I'm going to get a deal. Like, there'd be no value in the business, So it's good that it's hard, because then you have to push through that, and then you can ultimately land with some skills, and then you can start to do it. Because the key is, I see a lot of wholesalers, they just go on this like roller coaster, or flippers, doesn't matter. And they'll like get a bunch of deals, and then they'll stop marketing, and then they'll just be absolutely toasted for 3 months. They'll have no revenue. And then they'll market again when those deals close. And then they just get on this like roller coaster of income, because they're not marketing consistently, and they're not sharpening their sales skills. And they're just waiting for these we get layup sellers, right? Sure, we certainly get them, but we do not rely on layup sellers. Because if all we did was rely on layup sellers, we wouldn't have it. Like, we'd be doing 7 deals a year. You know what I mean? Like, they're not that like common. Like, we just had one last week, but I told Brett, my acquisitions guy, I'm like, we got to clone Walter and find a way to find as many of these Walters as we can find, because this was the easiest guy I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, those layups are definitely nice, dude. It's nice.
It was like the unicorn of unicorns. Like, I can't even, it was just crazy, this guy. He left us the best review. He was the happiest seller ever. Couldn't believe it. Yeah. Ridiculous.
So something you said right there that we've talked about before. I know Jason and I have talked about it. We've all talked about it, but I think a lot of people miss this opportunity when you're just getting started, which is to seek someone who's experienced to help you get across that finish line. Because, dude, how many times have you been just getting started out and you don't know what to do and you mess it all up on something you're doing new, right? But in real estate, there is a lot of people who have the right mindset, have the abundance mindset, and see the opportunity, the value to help each other and create that win-win. So, dude, on a couple of your first deals, you went to other investors, help you see that deal through the finish line, split it 50-50, and that's proof of concept. It's building momentum. It's putting money in the bank. Like that's a huge way for somebody who is getting started and experience on the vice versa side to seek each other out and add value to each other.
Yo, that is the best way for someone new to get. Like, we literally just had a deal close today where a new investor who didn't know what they were doing came to me. We split a $30,000 paycheck, 50-50. The attorney deposited the money today. And it was like the most complicated, hairy disaster property in New York. And I knew exactly what to do. Like, I'm like, hey, I know how to get this title issue cleared. Like, I've done this many times. And if it wasn't for the knowledge that I'm not trying to make this like a Greg commercial, but like if it wasn't for the knowledge I had, he wouldn't have made the money, because it was a very complicated scenario that needed like specific knowledge or specific expertise. And he was able to put 15 grand in his account. And, now he has that deal. And, for me as an experience, and you said something, Dean, like it makes a lot of sense. People will probably think like, oh, why would Dean take my phone call? Well, because Dean knows that that's additional revenue. And you're able to really help, like truly help somebody. Like if you're brand new and you split a deal 50-50, and even if that deal's 20 grand and you put 10 grand in your bank account, that will change your life. I can guarantee that, especially like if you've never done a deal before. And then going forward, and then that's 10 grand that Dean didn't know about, like the 10, he wouldn't have got the lead most likely. So it's such a win-win. Like when you hear new investors say like, hey, how do I add value to you? Like, that's a valid question. Bring a deal. You bring a deal, it's instant value for everybody. Even if someone's done 1,000 deals, that's still valuable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no question about it. Another thing I wanted to dive into that I went through the exact same experience of my start into real estate. I did my first deal in 3 months, which I feel like is a pretty good time period from my first Google search to closing my first deal, money in the bank. But it's not like I went off like a rocket ship after that. Like it was slow, steady growth, and it has been since the very beginning. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact I learned and I earned. I learned and I earned, just like you said. And my teachers were also people that were online, people I hadn't met, people who I'd never spoken to. And that's what I think the power of seeking the information and applying the information. Too many people seek the information, they hear it, but they don't take the action. Like Jason said, they hit the roadblock and then they stop, right? But I think it's just either the unique person or the person who perseveres that is able to get across that other side. And I think we always are trying to inspire people. And I think the biggest message is like, you just got to keep pushing until you get to that other side. And it's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be hard because it's new. There's, a lot of new skills you need to develop, but that's good. Just like you said, Greg, that's good. I'm glad it wasn't easy because that separates you from the rest of the people. So I just love everything you said there. And I went through a similar experience of like slowly learning and earning.
It's a gradual process. And it's like, I see too many people, like they get greedy in the beginning and they have no reason. Like being greedy is bad to begin with, but then they're like, oh, well, you want me to split the deal with you? And like meanwhile, they have like $10 in the bank and you're like, yeah, and it's like, so the point is like, you have to be abundant and you have to like look at relationships beyond one transaction. Like I see too much transactional behavior happen in this industry specifically because you can do transactional kind of stuff, but people don't understand like the value in a relationship for 10, 15, 50 years, not only is worth more money, but it's a hell of a lot of fun, right? Yeah. It's a hell of a lot of fun to build these relationships with people. Versus just having something be like a one-off scenario. And then you're just like, all right, that was cool, but I guess I'm not doing that again.
Yeah. Such a good perspective. So what was it for you? You mentioned you went through a period of time where you were just kind of like putting along there, you were trying to get traction. You were trying to have that breakthrough. What was it that was like that breakthrough moment for you to where it didn't feel like you were learning and earning and kind of like just barely getting by? You said you were in that moment where it's like, I couldn't even move out. It felt like,
Yeah. It was really getting good at spending my time doing the things that actually made money, because it's like people talk about that a lot, but they really don't know what that means. It's like, if you like break your day down, right, and you write all the activities that you do, like including your laundry or walking your dog or hanging out with your kids, you have to look at everything you do and you got to say, does this lead to money? Right. And like, I thought I was being productive, but I really wasn't. I was just kind of being busy. But once I was able to be like, all right, if I spend 4 hours a day on the phone, that's going to produce leads. Those leads are going to produce offers, and those offers are going to flow down to deals. That's when I started making like consistent money, because the thing is, that's usually uncomfortable in the beginning because you're going to get rejected. You're going to get, your offers declined. Like people are going to tell you to screw off. You're going to get your offers declined. Like all this stuff is going to just like, be like, there's like resistance. So people want to like, naturally, they want to avoid the resistance and they want to go like figure out their LLC name, which has zero revenue. Right. So like, it's easy to do that, but to actually get on the phone and like make offers and get leads, like that's really what got me consistent income, because every day I'm like, all right, if I want to do 3 deals this month, this is back in the day, I probably need to make 2 or 3 offers a day. And if for me to get 2 or 3 offers a day, I need to get 3 to 4 leads a day. And then back then it was like, okay, if I want to get 3 leads a day, I got to spend 4 hours looking for these properties to call. So when I call them, there's a high probability that they probably want to sell because it's vacant and there's taxes owed or it's in foreclosure or whatever the case is. So like I started just linking revenue down the stream to the direct activity of, in that case, it was prospecting. And then it became like mail and pay-per-click. And that's all like more, spending money to get deals. But once I like linked that, I started having like real cash flow in the business. Cause like I knew it was like predictable. Like, if I spend this time, I'm going to get these leads because it's already been proven for the last 6 months. And if I get these leads, I'm going to get these deals and it'll all average out. And that's usually what happens. But it's just like, people don't want to like get rejected. They don't want to be on the phone for 4 hours having someone say they don't want to sell because it's demoralizing, especially if you're new. But when you know that like that's what actually makes you the money, you can hopefully push through that, and then you can get consistency and you can have this be your full-time thing, and you can live, wherever you want within reason, and start to like slowly build your business organically versus going out and borrowing $100,000 on a credit card to like spend the money you don't even have, which I wouldn't advise.
How valuable was that experience, man? Because I see a lot of people that are starting, right? And they don't get those reps in, and they don't really understand how to nurture a lead, how to negotiate. They don't get those skills and they don't build them. They shortcut directly to hiring it out. And there's nothing wrong with delegating it. But I think sometimes if you don't have a good, solid understanding of how to even manage a sales and acquisitions process, right? Like as soon as you hire it out, how are you going to manage those people? So talk about that a little bit, Greg. That had to have been a valuable experience.
I hired Brett in 2021, right? So like up until then, I was doing all the buying myself. So I had a lot of experience dealing with sellers, right? And I understood the process from start to finish. I learned from a lot of great people. So once I brought him on, fortunately, he had real estate experience from another wholesaling company. So like I kind of got that lucky in that department. But I was able to like kind of see where he was at with his knowledge and what he knew. And then I was able to take what I knew that I always like to improve on and kind of like blend that together and then develop his own little system that is similar to mine, but there's some differences. He's a little bit more nice than I am. I'd say I'm a little bit more of like rugged with people. Like I'm just like, I want to get to the point. I don't want to fuck around. He's a little bit more nurturing. So I was able to take that, the knowledge I had, and then transfer it to him and then have him develop his own system. But because I had all those years doing it myself, like even to this day, like when he like loses a deal or something, I'm able to go back and be like, all right, so what happened there? Like, what was the main reason you think we lost? And I'll just ask him questions and I'll like give him a couple nuggets that he can use next time. Like, hey, what was the main deal killer? Oh, I didn't ask that. Okay, well, that might be an issue, like, and why we didn't get it. So next time, we'll talk about what are the objections, what are they going to do if they don't sell, like, et cetera. But I just generally will ask him like, what was the main problem? And then when he gives me the answers, I can start to like kind of peel the onion back and see where that process might have broken down, because a lot of, the deals we deal with are competitive, right? There's multiple buyers and, especially with like PPC and like mailers, but you got to be, the thing about that, I'll say, and I'm kind of on a tangent. I like when the deals are competitive because that means you really got to be good to get those deals.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot expect the unicorn. Like there's no unicorns with that. Like if they're getting 4 offers, like you better be really good or else zero chance. You know what I mean?
No, I agree, dude. The unicorns are nice, but I always feel a bigger sense of accomplishment with those competitive deals because I know our process is dialed in, our team is dialed in, right? Because I know, you have to be on it to get those ones where Dean's going after them. Everybody's going after the same thing. You know what I mean? So those are always a good feeling, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
At what point, Greg, did you start hiring people?
So I've had like VAs on and off, like sporadically throughout my entire journey, but like I actually like hired like real US like actual professionals in 2021. The first one was an assistant because I was like, I need to get a lot of this admin stuff off my plate. So that was the first hire. It was just like an admin assistant who can do a hybrid, transaction work, marketing stuff, social media content, like all that kind of stuff. That was like the first thing. And then I was doing that for a while where I had an admin in 2021 and she's still with me to this day. And then the way that I hired Brett was like, I was kind of bottlenecking myself with the sales, but it wasn't like a real, like urgent problem. Like I wasn't like, oh my God, I have no time. Like I had tons of time, but it was just kind of becoming like, I don't want to have to talk to sellers all day. Like I don't. And then he actually approached me and asked me, and I was like, I'd consider it. Like, I didn't say yes right away. Like, I'm like, I'd consider it. Let me like make sure this actually works for you. Cause he asked me and I knew it would work for me, but I wanted to make sure like what I had at the time was like optimal for him. Cause I want to make sure he was going to make money. So I thought about it for a couple of weeks and got back to him and I said, yeah, we should do this. And then we started rolling that out. He's still with me to this day. And then the third team member we have, Lindsay, that was this year because we were getting so inundated with like leads and he was dealing with a lot of the leads and I was kind of backfilling when we needed to. And my buddy, Jeremiah, was really switching to more of a referral model where like he's getting a lot more referral deals and like deals from agents and stuff. So it really didn't have a need for a lead manager. And he was like, going to have Lindsay go somewhere else, just kind of let her go. And I'm like, hey, like, we could use some help. We have a lot of leads. Like, I already knew her because I trained her on the sales training. And like I knew, she knew what she was doing. So I kind of called her up and I'm like, hey, like this is kind of what we have here. Is this something you think you'd want to be a part of? And we talked, in detail on how it would make sense for her first and foremost. And then, she joined us and now, we got a nice little core team together.
And what does she do exactly?
She does all the lead management. She does all like the follow-ups, lead management. And I have her do another thing so that's like critical role is calling the leads back ASAP. That's like, I'm not even 80-20, it's 95-5. Like that's the most important thing, period, end of story. After that, she'll follow up with some of the leads. Like Brett usually follows up with like the really, really hot ones where like there's probably going to be a deal. And then the third thing she does is I have like a little system where like we have like county records and we'll like deep dive like the foreclosures and like the vacant kind of like what I was doing in Texas. And she'll actually call those people now and she'll get like, she just got a good lead today from that, like where she called the foreclosure, like a recent foreclosure. Cause I trained her on how to get the county data and she'll call those people. And then whenever that person, if they raise their hand, she'll kind of screen them out and then she'll send them over to Brett. So she does really three main components for our business. I try to keep her busy all day.
Yeah. Nice.
So, dude, it sounds like if I heard you right in the opening, you started doing virtual investing 2018. Is that right?
Yeah.
Time frame?
Yeah. 2018.
So like that was going virtual obviously has become much more popular in our market now.
Yeah.
But even back then, like even 2018, it wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, you having the insight, especially at the age that you're at then to say, hey, let me try this. Right. Like that, I think got you ahead. And I think I followed along with you seeing some of the stuff that you're doing. What was it about? Was it just because New York was such a difficult market to navigate? We get a lot of that in California too. It's like, oh, the deals are too expensive. We can't do them. Maybe you got to go do something else. What was it about virtual?
So
that got you doing that?
So the first thing, like the first problem I needed to solve was that New York was hard and I had no money. So that was like problem A. And once that got fixed and I was able to like do it in Texas and, now I didn't have to physically, cause I never lived in Texas. Right. So I was always in California. So once that like got solved and we were making money in Texas, then I actually started going back. Like our main market is still New York now, but I had like an infrastructure and marketing and like contractors and all that kind of shit. So like once I was living in San Diego the majority of the year, I was like, wait a minute, we can buy houses over the phone. And I think that's more effective. I think it just in terms of like driving around town just sucks, right? Getting no showed at appointments, wasting your whole day. Like I just hate that. So that was the first thing, buying. And now it's normal to buy over the phone. Back in 2018, 19, it wasn't normal to buy over the phone. You should go to the house. That's like the typical advice. So now it's like you should buy over the phone, right? So that was an interesting thing. And the second thing is I realized this is the biggest nugget I got because I was just in New York for like 3 weeks. Like me, like Greg Helbeck going to a property, unless it's like a unicorn fix and flip where like I got to be a home inspector and walk through the thing, it doesn't really add a lot of value. Like me going to the property at this point doesn't really do much. Sure, I can probably find something here and there and whatever, but I can send a real estate agent out there. I can send Brett out there in Delaware. He'll go on appointments if needed. I can send, whoever out, someone to take pictures of the property, especially if we're wholesaling, which is about 50% of our business. We're wholesaling. Like the buyer's the one going there to make the decision. So like me going there doesn't really do anything. So I realized that like me physically being at properties doesn't really move the needle. And it just allows me to have more time behind the computer, doing what I got to do. And it just gives me more energy. So I started to realize, like, okay, we can buy these over the phone. We can send people to the property, take pictures, etc. And me going there doesn't really do much at this point. So like, it just kind of organically became where like the highest and best use was like to not go out and see the property until we got it under contract, right? Then we'd send someone out there. But it doesn't have to be Brett. It doesn't have to be me. It could be someone that literally, like, you can send a notary out to a property for $100. They can take pictures. They don't have to even notarize anything. And you got all your pictures to get your 50 photos for your wholesale blast. And that $50 or $100 or whatever just bought you 2 hours of time that you or your team could be spending making offers. So I actually think that doing it virtually, for the most part, I will say sometimes it does add more value if you go on the appointment. It really depends on the seller. You could be just as effective because ultimately you're going to get more offers out too if you're doing it over the phone. Because I go walk a property, let me go write my notes, let me go back to my office and run that takes. I just don't like getting my time sucked, like physically driving to properties. Like it's just really pain in the ass, and it takes the energy out of me versus giving me energy. Yeah.
You talked about 50% of your business is wholesale. The other 50% is flips. Yeah.
Flips or rentals. It's been more rentals now. Like I'm starting to buy more rentals now, but we're closing on that property. Like the other 50%, we're either closing it, fixing and flipping it, closing it, cleaning it out, relisting it. That's being a little hard. That's a little harder to do now with the market. You got to add a little bit of value now. It's just, at least in my areas, you got to do some kind of work. Like if you sell a shit box, it just doesn't sell that well. And then the other, we'll rent it out. I'll do the BRRRR or whatever and just kind of refi. I've been doing a lot of BRRRRs where I'm just doing like rate and term refis. I could talk about, if you guys want, I could talk about that. That's been some ninja shit that I learned that really has helped me kind of accelerate everything. So either flipping, wholetailing, or doing the BRRRR.
Jump into that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say jump into that because I think a lot of what's happening now with the interest rate environment where we're in now, right? It's harder to make the numbers pencil. And I know I built my portfolio doing BRRRR. I know Dean did same thing. We just buy cheap rehab, but now with rates at whatever they are on a CR loan, they're 8.
Yeah, dude, it's tough.
Dude. Yeah, it doesn't. Cash flow numbers don't work as well. So what are you doing to overcome that?
So with these interest rates, they're all kind of all over the place. If you guys are familiar with like Barry, have you guys heard of Barry Habib?
Yep.
So he's coming on the show in a couple of weeks, and I'm excited to interview him.
Oh, good for you, dude. Yeah.
Straight guru. Yeah. I was like DM slid in his DMs. But anyway, the rates are like, even he talks about it, like they're very like volatile. Like you don't really know what's going on now. So what I've learned from another mentor who I hired, his name's Augie, basically, the whole thing with the BRRRR is the cash out refi, right? You got to wait 6 to 12 months to do that, right? Like, and then like at that point, who knows where the rates are going to be? So the whole BRRRR, you buy it, you renovate it, you keep the short-term finance, and then it's turning into like 12 months now. I think with the way that Fannie and Freddie is, that seasoning period keeps getting longer and longer. So what I'm doing now, and I got to say this with a grain of salt, you have to have the right property to do this. If you have like a tight deal, this does not work. But if you can get like a true BRRRR deal, like a 70 cents on the dollar minus repairs, whatever your market is, right? I'm borrowing the purchase, the rehab, the closing costs, and sometimes like a little wholesale fee, depending on how deep the deal's bought. I'm taking all that money up front in the form of a first mortgage. So I basically got paid everything up front. I'm out of pocket zero, doing the property, doing the construction. I have a little wholesale fee. If the numbers work, I'll only do that. And then instead of waiting 6 months or 12 months to do the cash out refi and the rates, who knows where they're going to be, within 2 months, I'll just do a rate and term refi. And all that lender, and I usually do the conventional thing because I haven't maxed it out yet, but that conventional lender is just looking at that first mortgage payoff. That's all he cares about. I can't get cash in my pocket, but he just wants to know that first mortgage payoff. And then he's gonna do the rate and term based on that, compared to the appraised value. So you're able to basically do the same thing as you would do as a BRRRR and get all your money out by borrowing everything up front and then just flip it over to a rate and term refi when the house is done. And now you can, get a deal in 2 or 3 months versus waiting 6 to 12 months. And you can just keep moving that money that way. So you have to have private money to do this. If you don't have private money, it's not going to work because a hard money lender is only going to give you like 90%. And then they're going to make you do all the draw bullshit. So you have to have private money if you want to pull that off. But that's been working extremely well for us.
So that's interesting. So all the lenders that, at least from my prior experience, they've always have looked at purchase price. So your lender looks at the amount for your first position deed of trust when you do it.
Purchase price. He just cares about the first mortgage payoff.
That's
as long as the first mortgage payoff is 75% or less.
Yeah,
that's all they care. At least this is my guy in Long Island. That's the way he does it. He doesn't care what it was bought for because like he assumes, okay, this guy bought it for whatever 150. Let's call it 150. He put 80 into it. and he borrowed, let's say 190 because the closing costs. And as long as the 190 is, 75% or less, that's all his underwriter cares about. Right.
Damn,
so that's what I asked him. First one we did, I was like, hey, do you care? Like, do you just care about the mortgage? Like, I just care about, he's like, I just care about the first position. If that is 75% or less, I don't care what it is. You just, it's got to meet this certain appraisal thing. And the thing I said in the beginning, you have to buy that deal deep to do this. Because if you don't buy it deep, you're going to have to write a check for whatever the difference is. Right.
That's what Dean and I talk about a lot, because people try to sell us, a deal that doesn't really even pencil as a flip, and they'll say, oh, it makes a great rental. And it's like, listen, dude, like the rentals I buy are cheaper than the stuff that I even flip.
That's what I said.
I mean? Yeah.
The rentals I buy deeper than the flips, because I can make 20 grand and that's okay. But with a freaking burr, you got all of these costs baked into these people don't understand how expensive, at least in New York, the refi closing costs are disgusting. You have to fund the escrow a year in advance. And the taxes are like 15 grand a year. So like these two properties, like you have to get these things so cheap to pull that, what I was telling you about, off. But that's what's work can kind of like be on track with the interest rates. Cause like, if you're banking on a cash out refi in 6 months and they go up another point, now you're looking at 8.5. That thing's probably not going to, and then you already have a renter in there. So you can't really sell it. So you're kind of screwed.
It's smart, dude. And you're padding that initial loan a little bit with the fee or whatever you want to call it. So it's almost essentially like you're cashing out too. You're just getting it on the front. You know what I mean? You're not that's good. Good stuff.
The thing I said is it's got to be like, you got to have private money lined up to do that, because a hard money guy, no bueno. He ain't going to do that. He's not going to.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So Greg, we fell into doing that ourselves too by mistake, where we borrowed extra private money because we thought maybe there would be more rehab that we did or whatever, but we came in, under budget, which isn't normal. But we came in under budget,
which that was the case for me.
and it's like, well, we don't really have to do a cash out refi to get some extra funds. We can just do a rate and term. I guess we did borrow a little extra, but we still got this extra money in our bank that's tax free. So
that's right.
We stumbled upon that ourselves, and it's a heck of a thing, because like you said, you can go rate and term, and there's more advantages going the rate and term versus the cash out refi.
Yeah, because usually your points and your interest rate are lower too, right? When you go rate and term,
everything is lower. Yeah, especially like I like to go conventional because you get the cheaper rates, and that's another thing. Like real estate investors, like a lot of people, like they like I don't want to pay a lot of taxes, but if you can get really bankable, like with a good tax return, it's so much easier to get loans, because the lender's like, oh, this is a dream person. Like they have no debt and they have high income. Like, so a lot of people, like they'll wash all their income out, which is okay. And I've been there and done that. But if you can pay reasonable amount of taxes and become very bankable, when you go to do these conventional loans, you can get way lower interest rates and you can get your 10 loans or whatever. And then after that, you got to figure it out. But the thing I like about that rate and term thing is, think about, you can really turn these properties a lot faster. Cause like if I can be in and out of a burr deal, a reverse burr deal in 2 months, I can pull 3 more in the chamber. So then when that's done, I can put the guy into the next one, and then I can put the guy into the next one, and I can just keep turning these things. I don't have to wait that 6 months with a hard money payment. And then maybe the interest rates change, Yeah.
So things get dicey. So dude, I wanted to ask you, what is going virtual done for you besides just, more flexible schedule, not having to go on the appointments and kind of go through that grind? Because I'm obviously big into being virtual as well. What has it done for you, man? Like you're bouncing back and forth coast to coast. That's one of the things that like caught my interest when I first learned about you and kind of started following you on social. I was like, dude, this guy's going coast to coast, man. He's doing deals in the most competitive markets. This is crazy. How is he doing this? So tell me more about that. Just like what virtual's allowed you to do in terms of being in both markets, what it feels like to be in both markets. Like, is it cool? Is it exciting? Do you hate it? Like, what's it like for you?
Yeah. So I'll start that with a market thing. So the only reason I'm in Delaware is because Brett moved there. Like I think I've driven through Delaware 5 times in my life, like on the way to DC or like South Carolina, because I grew up on the East Coast and I still basically live there. So like I never knew anything about that area. But when Brett moved, he's my acquisitions guy. Because he was buying houses virtually for me, right? So when he said he wanted to move to Delaware, I'm like, great. Like, God bless you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And once he got down there, I'm like, I started looking into the market, like his local market. And I'm like, there's not a lot of competition here. Like there is, but it's not like San Diego competition. And the houses are actually kind of expensive. It's not like dirt cheap, like rednecks. Like it's completely, it's like the Philly suburbs, right? So like the price points are pretty good. And like there's a lot of demand to live there because how close it is to Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, whoever would want to go to Baltimore, but it's near there. So you're in like a nice major metro kind of plex. And I'm like, all right, if you're going to be living here and there's no like real attorney bullshit in Delaware, you can kind of do whatever you want. Like there's no real rules down there. So I'm like, why don't we do some marketing here and see how it goes? Right. That was it. Like, and we were still pretty much just doing stuff in New York. I'd do a handful of deals in San Diego just because I live here, et cetera. And we did a deal and we broke even on the fix and flip. And I was a little pissed about it, but I'm like, let's keep doing this. Like, I don't want to just hang the towel up after one deal. So we did another deal in like the absolute hood of Wilmington, like nasty, nasty area. And I'm like, all right, we made a little bit of money. And then we did another deal and we turned our money in like 21 days. It was like a 21-day close. And in New York, that's like impossible. And I'm like, oh my God, we just made like 15 grand in 21 days. Then we did another deal. And then I started to understand how that market worked and who the players were. And then like, I'm like, oh my God, dude, Brett, I think we ran into gold here. I think this is pure gold down here because there's not that much competition. There's a lot of demand for properties. There's a huge opportunity for us to like really take a good piece of this market over time. And it just kind of fell into, and I've never planned to live in Delaware in my life. So I'm like, I'm not going to like live there ever. So like, that's how the Delaware kind of thing happened. He like moved there to live with his fiance. And that's how we ended up in Delaware. New York, I've always just kind of been a New York guy, I guess. I mean, I've always known that market very well. Like I grew up there. I know a ton of people there. Super expensive. The spreads are huge in New York because it's so, pricey. It's kind of like a little like 2 steps below San Diego in terms of price. And I just always had a lot of momentum there and like the network and the attorneys and all the title company insurance guys. Like I just have such a good hub there, kind of like what you guys have in Fresno. And like we all have a pretty good community of investors in New York for the most part. So it's always just kind of made sense to still operate there. And then once I was able to kind of remove myself from physically living there full time and having to go on appointments, like our process just ultimately got better because now we weren't like bottlenecked by appointments or anything like that and the contractors, et cetera. So that's, I guess, the New York reason, the Delaware is Brett. And then the San Diego one, I mean, I was like a pansy to do deals out here. I don't do a ton of houses in Southern California, but after like living here for like maybe 2 years, I had my buddy, like I'm not going to mention his name, but he told me about how much money he made on this deal. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, you made that much money out here? And I knew what he was doing. I'm like, dude, I got to, because I was like scared because everyone's like, oh, San Diego's impossible, which it is hard. And I started doing some marketing out here and I did like a $40,000 assignment in like 20 days. And I was like, holy shit. And then I did another one for like 70 and then another one, like, and then I was just kind of like, all right, like it's definitely a lot harder in San Diego. But if I can do like 3 or 5 deals a year out here and make like, let's call it 60 grand a deal, that's worth it. That's definitely worth it for me. And actually a buddy of yours in your markets wholesaled me a property in like Spring Valley.
I think you told me that. Yeah.
A home run. It was like $135,000 net. And I'm like,
that's
Jesus
right.
Christ. Like it didn't make any sense. I'm like, if I do 2 of these in San Diego a year, I will be, just absolutely. And I bought the house when I was in New York. Right. And then I had a contractor do the whole thing. So I really didn't have to go there. And it's 20 minutes from where I live. So like, it just became to where like, it doesn't really matter where you are if you have a good process in place, right? Like if I wanted to go buy houses in, I don't know, Alabama, I'd have to plug my system down there. It's going to take probably 4, 5, 6 months to get some reasonable momentum if we're spending enough money. And then we'll find the realtors down there. We'll find the contractors, which is not easy. We'll find the title companies that allow wholesaling. Like you can plug this system in anywhere. It just takes like, usually like 4 to 6 months to really like kind of get some momentum going. And then after like a year, if you really do it hard, you can get like established in that market. And then like, you can kind of be wherever you want to be. It's just the same system in the different place with that momentum ramp up period. And then you're off and running.
It's cool, dude, that you cut your teeth doing it in your backyard first, because I think you gain a lot of that experience.
Yeah.
And then I also love how you made the transition, because it's very easy to get complacent and just, even though you want to delegate things as a business owner and a visionary, if you're doing everything in your backyard, it's so easy to just say like, you know what, I'll do it instead of hiring that position or out. Virtual forces you, because there's
you have no
I'll
choice.
just run over to the
No
property.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's I think it's good. I think like just listening to your trajectory, it's great for a new person, because you cut your teeth at the beginning, then went virtual and took all the stuff that you learned and then implemented those systems, man. That's awesome.
It's funny. I tell my knucklehead friends in New York when we have dinner, I said, you bozos are making a bunch of money here. I said, you guys are leaving 300, 400, 500 grand a year in your pocket on the table by not doing this in another state. Because the thing in New York that people don't realize is the average cash conversion cycle on a wholesale deal is like 90 to 120 days.
Jeez.
Because there's like 7 attorneys. The title takes forever to get back. If there's a title issue, forget about it. Like, it's going to take forever. You got all these like building departments. It's such a disaster there. So like, you make these huge spreads, but it takes forever to get things, especially with rehabbing. It's like double. So like, if you're just in that area, like, you can make a lot of money, but you're going to have these like huge months and down months and this and that. But if you can kind of, like, I tell my friends this, I'm like, because they're always hunting for deals. I'm like, listen, take what you're doing in New York, go to Pennsylvania down the street, and I guarantee you it's going to be easier. And even if you do 1 or 2 deals a month in Pennsylvania and you make 10 grand a deal, that's 20 grand a month you're putting in your pocket in theory. And you're going to turn that money a lot faster. So, and another thing with like the creative financing in New York is very difficult because the attorneys kill it all the time. So like, I just feel like if you can do it in like an area like New York, you can kind of do it anywhere. Like, it's like, if you can figure it out in the New York City area, you go into like a market like Alabama or South Carolina, like you're going to be like, oh my God, wait, there's no attorney. The DocuSign, like you can, I'm like, yeah, dude, you just DocuSign the damn thing and send it to the title company. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's how it works in, 49 states. You just sign a contract and submit it.
It's a good point, dude, especially if you're flipping heavy at the beginning. I think we've all kind of gone through these growing pains where you said that cash conversion cycle, it's so much longer on a flip. And you're like on this carousel that you can never get off, because it's like, I know I'm making money, but it never feels like I have money because all the money is going to the very next project and the account is always like this. So limiting the size of those peaks and valleys by implementing maybe some stuff that closes quicker is really good advice.
That's what I realized why Delaware benefits us so much is we're able to supplement a lot of these bigger rehabs we'll do in New York with these wholesales, and we still close in Delaware too, and we'll flip there too. But like, we're able to supplement. Like, it's all of like, once you have like, like a business that's decently sized, the cash flow is the main concern. Like, you could be having like a 500K month or whatever, but then if the next month is 0, and then the month after that is 10 grand, you're toasting. So like, you have to be like always like looking at your pipeline and be like, all right, what's closing this week? What's closing next week? We have overhead, we have salaries, we have marketing, like that has to get paid for, preferably with no debt, right? So you have to keep that front and center. So even with any rehabber, like if you can assign, 15 properties a year, and make another 300 grand, like you could use that to just pay for all your marketing, and then all your flips are free,
Yep.
So it goes a long way.
So I know Jason's got a travel bug. He's traveling all the time. I got 4 kids that are young, so it's hard to travel. We do try to get out and do it. We make our best effort. But did I see you going all over the place too, besides traveling coast to coast? Tell me what real estate investing virtual has allowed you to do.
Yeah.
I know we were kind of talking about it a little bit before the show, but like, what kind of trips have you gone on? What are those experiences been like? Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I never really did any crazy international traveling before real estate, mainly because I was like 19 years old, right? But once I started like doing deals and whatnot, I wanted to start to like, see more of the world, whatever. So the first time I went out of the country, like out of the continent, whatever, was Europe. I went there for like, I think 10 days, and I was able to still do deals while I was over there. It's a little weird with the time change, but like that kind of opened my eyes up to like seeing the world and whatnot. That was in 2020 before the China virus came to town. And then once that settled down, I went to Singapore last year, and I had no like reason to really go there. Like, I always wanted to stay at that hotel with the cool
infinity pool at the top.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I like literally one night, I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to Singapore. And I booked a plane ticket and I booked a couple, I think, it's 5 nights at that hotel. And I went for 5 days, flew to Singapore by myself, nobody with me, just went over there, like 17-hour flight to Singapore, checked the whole country out. I mean, it's not that big. Did the whole thing. And I was able to like do some bit, like nothing crazy because you're so 12 hours off or whatever. So that was just a really eye-opening experience, like to just see and like another side of the world. When I came back to America, I was like, Jesus, like that was one of the coolest things I've ever done. It was like a 5-day trip to Singapore. And I'm like, well, what else can I do? So then this year I went to Dubai for, I think, 6 days. I flew from New York to Dubai with my good friend, Joe, who's also a real estate guy. He's like the rental king over in Middletown. I call him the king of the dipshits. If he's listening, he knows what I'm talking about. He went with me to Dubai. We flew over there, stayed at some nice places, was able to see the Middle East. I mean, I've never, been over there, obviously. And when I came back from that, I had like another, like, oh my God, like it was so like that 5 or 6 days of experiencing that culture, like really still has stuck with me to this day. And it wasn't even like a third world country. It was like Dubai, it's basically like Times Square. But like it really like opened my eyes up, and we still were able to like somewhat get deals done. Like it wasn't perfect because we were so far away. And then I went to Aruba with my family, and I'm always going, places in America, Colorado, whatever, Florida. But it just the point is like it allows you, like when you have a virtual operation, you are not restricted by, the only thing that's restricting you is the Wi-Fi, really. That's it. Like, so if you have Wi-Fi and you're willing to, spend 2-3 hours a day when you're overseas or whatever, you can still get shit done. It's not going to be optimal, but like it allows you to just, do whatever you want, live wherever you want. You can live in Washington, you can live in Florida, you can live in Boston, you can live in Phoenix. It doesn't matter. Like your business is just going off of the internet and WhatsApp and text messaging and emails. Like it just allows you to like realize like you can do this business anywhere. And I remember listening to podcasts back in the day when I was just getting started, and like I would listen to all the virtual shows because that's what I wanted to do. And these guys were like, in Czech Republic doing deals and like traveling. And I'm like, that just seems crazy to me. Like, how the fuck could you just have your laptop and your phone be how you can make money? And it was just a belief that wasn't broken yet. And then once you do it and you actually get a wire in your account from another state or whatever, and you didn't go to the property, it's almost like it's like when you do your first real estate deal in your local market, you're like, holy shit.
Like, wow. Yeah.
Wow. Like I never went there and I made money, and now I can do that again. Like that's what really, like the first Texas deal, when that happened, I was like, holy shit. I was sitting in New York in a basement and I got a wire for 10 grand. And I didn't go to the property and never met the seller, never met the buyer. And I sent an email with my wiring instructions, and it just like opens your eyes up to like, holy shit. You got that Wi-Fi business, and, it's so common to do it now. That's the thing. Like it wasn't very common in 2018 to do this. Like it was kind of getting there, but now I see like there's all these big companies I follow, and like all the big players who are doing like, let's call it 20 plus deals a month. They're not going on appointments for the most part. They're buying over the phone. They're selling over the phone. If they're rehabbing, like the owner is not going to the rehabs and like managing it, like they have a PM or something. So, it's really not that hard to do it in today's day and age with the technology that we have. FaceTime. I mean, literally just like I have my contractors FaceTime me. I'm like, hey, FaceTime me before I send you the money, buddy. Okay. Yep. That bathroom's done. Okay. Here's the money. Like, you don't, me going there doesn't do anything. It's stupid.
I think it really incentivizes you to get your systems and your processes dialed in, because we were talking about it before. It's like, we're going to take a trip for a couple weeks here in July, and we're going to be gone. And I don't want to be on my computer for 8 hours a day when I'm visiting my family. And you know what I'm saying? And so it is such an eye-opening thing to see that transaction hit. And then you're like, how can we just recreate this? So whether I'm at the office or I'm traveling or whatever, I don't have to have my fingerprints over every single little piece of the business, man. So it really does force you to get better at implementing that stuff.
100%, man. And you got to have like, even with like when you're doing remote rehabs, which can get a little sticky, like you got to have good contractors, and you got to hold them accountable to a serious process. Right. And it's all like DocuSign and the contracts. And like, it's like, if you want to start like leveling up and like buying a property for 400 grand and doing a fix and flip without ever seeing that, you're forced to have a good team and a really good process, because there's a lot of money on the line for something like that. So, but when you have the right people though, like it really is not terribly challenging because you'd have the same problems if you were there. You'd be going to the house to bitch at the contractor versus yelling at him on the phone. Like,
that's right.
Shit, you know?
Yeah. That's a key point right there, is the ability to do what you're doing now comes down solely to the people you have on your team.
100%.
Even your extended team, consider a contractor, an extended team member. It's critical. Otherwise, everything falls apart, man.
Yep.
100%. And the vendors, like having a good insurance guy, having a good title. I mean, this shit is like critical. Like I have attorneys in Delaware where like, they know that we'll be calling them or emailing them and they know how much business we give them. And like you get treated, a certain way, like, cause they know they value your business and you treat people the right way. And you have like that staple. So then when there's a problem, hey, can we get this sub 2 deal done? Oh yeah. Sub 2 deal. No problem. And then done, I had that happen on my first sub 2 deal. I'm like,
no problem. Forget about it.
I hit up an attorney. I hit up my attorney in Delaware and I'm like, hey, this might sound out of the blue. Have you ever done a sub 2 deal? He's like, oh my God, a sub 2 deal. Are you kidding me? That's easy peasy. And he like threw this thing together and I didn't even have to freaking get anything notarized. I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to give you more of these, but I had a good team member. Like if you have a shitty title company, they're gonna be like, oh, what you're doing is illegal. And oh, we can't take that file. And you're just like, it's complete bullshit. Right. So you got to have people who really understand this business and know what they're doing. Cause like I see so many investors, they'll go to like an attorney in New York, some belt and suspenders jerk. And they'll be like, hey, can I assign a contract? Like, assignments? Are you kidding me? That's illegal. And then they're like, Greg, that's illegal. I can't do this in Westchester. It's like, dude, call my attorney. He does 15 of these a month with me and 3 other guys. What are you doing? So like, I see that with new people. They just like get one idiot's opinion and then they think it doesn't work. It's just like, you need to have a good team. Like that definitely is critical.
If your conversations sound anything like this with the sellers, I want those recordings immediately. I would just listen to those for entertainment going on walks.
So I will say with sellers, I'm a little, I'm not as nurturing as Brett. He's way better. Like, I'm to their face. Like, I'm nice. I'm not a complete asshole, but like,
no, I'm just saying the East Coaster. And I'm not talking about what you're saying.
They are like that. They are like
East
that.
Coaster in you is, it's comedic for me. So.
Yeah. The West Coast, I always say when I moved to California, they're just different out there. The people on the West Coast are just a different, it's just the way that they are, like nothing bad about them, but they're just people in New York are so.
Tell us what you really think. What's your opinion?
It's all good stuff, gentlemen. It's just a different, like when you deal with someone, like everyone thinks they're getting scammed over there. It's just a different, like people are very like even Lindsay, she was in North Carolina, our lead manager. And when she started talking to New York people, she was like, oh my God, that person was angry. And then Brett will call them back and they're like, they're just a direct person. Like we probably buy that house, but like, it's all like, cause in the South people are nice, right? Like up north, they're like, screw you, buddy. Like, give me your offer. And if you don't know how to handle that, like you might think they're a jerk, but cause it's funny.
They were having a good day that day, right?
They're having a good day. Yeah. That's funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, dude, what, just kind of like wrap things up. Like what's exciting for Greg right now? Like, what are the things that just like get you excited? Kind of where do you want to take your business? Where do you want to take your lifestyle and what you're doing? Like, what's next for you, man?
It's really leveling up these rental properties. That's what's been like priority for me. And doing this like BRRRR thing. Like I see everyone says the word at scale. I'm not going to say at scale because it's just butchered, but doing this repeatedly 2 to 4 times a month. That's what I've been focusing on. Like, I think this month we have 3 in the chamber that we got in contract that are straight rentals. Doing that and making that a serious priority, because I fucked around with rentals since 2020. I'd dabble, I'd buy one here, one there, do a cowboy rehab and, get a bad tenant. And, I've seen all that shit. So now it's like systematizing these rentals to where every month the standard is 2 properties a month minimum and compounding that over the next 60 months. Like that's what I've really been focusing on, because there's a lot of money you can make fix and flipping and doing assignments. I love it. But the rentals, when you look at your balance sheet, the wealth is in the rentals, right? Yep. And it took me, I don't know, 6 years to figure that out. And you see these properties.
Took me a while too, dude, till the light bulb went off, man.
And it's like, you almost like, I had this on a recent BRRRR. I'm like, in my hometown, actually. I'm like, I can flip this and make 70 racks, or I can BRRRR this thing and make like a little baby wholesale fee and have all this equity. And it'll make $150 a month. but I was like, I'm keeping this. Like, this is a property I'm keeping. And it's like getting into that discipline of being able to keep properties will really set you up long term. And I think that's what I've been focusing on now. And, we're just going to continue to do that as well as grow our regular business. So
I think the reason behind that is it's a phase. Like when you're first starting out, you're just trying to get past the fight or flight stage. You're just trying to survive and make it and get into a stable environment of consistent business and deals to where you feel comfortable. And you're just then after that trying to get past the point of feeling like you're past that point. You've got some cushion and you feel like you've actually made something.
Yeah, that's
and
so true, man.
Then it's like you look around, if you have gotten that far, then you've made enough money to where you're like, okay, well, sure, more is good, but now I need to start to be smart because of taxes, because I need to start building wealth. So it's just a phase, man. I went 6 years deep, same as well. Took me that long to light bulb go off. And I was like, oh, I need to like build wealth. I have no wealth right now.
Yeah.
I just have, a decently paying job.
That's the thing with the flips. And it eludes people. It's like, I remember the first time I bought a rental in 2020, it was like New York, by the way, is like ridiculous with tenant landlord laws. It's just like California. It might be worse, actually, depending on where you are. And I was so scared to buy it. I'm like, holy shit, I have tenants. Like, what the fuck? Like, how do I deal with these people? Like, there's COVID. I was fucking scared out of my mind. Yeah. And then I did another one and I had like these terrorist tenants, like non-payment, lawsuit, almost 2 years to evict them. And I was like, fuck. Like, but the thing, I had so much equity when I did the refi because I still did the burr, even though it wasn't really making any money. It was an alligator burr. Like, it was costing me money. Right. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, oh my, and I was like at a point where I was almost like, all right, I had like 3 properties or maybe 2. I think I had two properties. And I was like, all right, these 2 properties are causing all of this stress. Should I just get these things off my hands and sell them? But I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Like, that's not why I got into this business. So like the one property, once we got the clown out of there, like now it's like the nicest property in the area, renovated top to bottom, like beautiful, almost looks like new construction inside. I got a tenant paying top of the market rent in a premium area. And I started doing that now with these other properties. And I'm like, oh my God, thank goodness I didn't sell that freaking thing. Thank goodness I didn't sell that first property. And it's just like, this makes sense now. I see how these real estate people become ultra wealthy because they're like, the thing is like you're stacking cash when you're flipping, but when you're doing rentals, you're stacking that equity up.
That's right.
Stack, $40,000 per deal twice a month. If you're stacking $80,000 a month of equity, I mean, in a year, you'll be a millionaire on paper, technically, right? Like if you really like did that system, like that's what really excites me now. And just learning how to become a better rental investor and dealing with tenants. And, that's a whole nother story for another podcast, but, the rental business really excites me, to say the least.
Yeah, dude. I've always looked at our rentals as our insurance policy against everything else, man. Especially when you're buying them the way that we are, right?
Yeah.
Like I heard you say, thank God I kept these around. I've been telling myself that for a while, dude, because it's just like, dude, I have so much equity. I have so much cash flow that comes in, right? Like I just feel like, not this sense of the hamster wheel that we're on constantly when we're just focusing on the transactional side of the business. Dude.
Exactly. So and even with the thing, there's so many things about them. Like if you buy we're in New York and California, right? So like these are coastal states, I guess we'll call it. And Fresno is a pretty big city. Like think about the appreciation over 30 years in these areas, even Delaware, Philadelphia, right? It's insane when you can think about that. But people, if they're in today money mode, which is understandable, they can't see past this. Like, oh, I want my 50K check now, which is great. But if you can say in 30 years, your properties went up 2.5, 3 times and it's free and clear and you're making 4 racks a month net and you got 70 of those,
game changer.
You can do whatever you want within reason, Yeah. So
absolutely. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been super fun to have you. So many good gems and wisdom that you've gone through. So thanks for sharing with the audience. Again, guys, if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to leave a 5-star review. And Make sure to follow us on social media. You can find me at Dean Rogers Real Estate. Find Jason at Jason Pritchard and Greg Helbeck at Grego37. So we appreciate you guys being listening to the Deal Champs podcast. Greg, thank you so much for being on, man. We'll catch you guys all later.
Thanks, brother.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.